Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dear viewers, from today we begin our ninth topic in investigating the history of the collection and transmission of the Qur'an. Now, this topic relates to evaluating the narratives in which it is reported that Abdullah ibn Masud, one of the very famous companions of the Prophet, had refused to hand over his Mushaf to the authorities in the times of the Caliph Uthman, when Uthman himself, as we know, had embarked upon a huge campaign of destroying all spurious masahif. He not only refused to hand over his Mushaf, he also urged his other companions to hide their masahif. And we know that Abdullah had been residing in Kufah at that time, and he was sent there by Caliph Umar anhu in 21st Hijrah. And he was sent as a teacher and as an in charge of the public treasury. So he was so furious when the officials of Uthman came to him that he not only refused to hand over his own Mushaf, he, as I said, asked his companions to hide their masahif as well. And he is reported to have remarked at that time that why should he leave his reading in favor of Zayd's reading, Zayd ibn Sabit's reading, on which it was alleged that Uthman was unifying the ummah on, when he himself, that is Abdullah ibn Masud himself, had learned 70 surahs directly from the mouth of the Prophet. So in this topic we shall investigate and evaluate how these narratives stand to the test of historical criticism. Now, in my own research, I have found out that there are 18 people or 18 narrators who report this narrative. So I'm going to read out all these 18 people's narratives before you, and then later on we shall inshallah see the questions which arise not only on the text but also on the chain of narration of these narratives. So I'll begin, and the first category of these narratives is reported by Abu Shehzad Saleem ibn Aswad. The narrative he reports is, An Abi Shehzad قال كنا جلوسا في المسجد وعبد الله يقرأ فجاء حذيفة فقال قراءة ابن عبد وقراءة أبي موسى الأشعري والله إن بقيت حتى أتى أمير المؤمنين يعني عثمان لأمرته بجعلها قراءة واحدة قال فغضب عبد الله فقال لحذيفة كلمة شديدة فقال فسكت حذيفة. Abu Shehzad said, we were sitting in the mosque and Abdullah ibn Masud was reading the Qur'an. Huzaifa came by and said, reading of Ibn Abd and reading of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, by God, if I live so that I'm able to meet the leader of the Muslims, Uthman, I will suggest to him to unifying their reading. The narrator said, Abdullah became very angry and spoke harshly with Huzaifa. He, Abu Shehzad, said, at this, Huzaifa became silent. And we know from another narrative in Kitab al-Masahif, Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif, that he had actually said that by God, if you do this, may God drown you in something other than water. And Shazan, who is a narrator, he said that in the fire of these masahif. So these were the harsh words which were exchanged between Huzaifa and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So Huzaifa was the person we know who was responsible, or who was the person who reported differences in reading to the Caliph Uthman. We have already discussed those in detail, and we see how badly Abdullah ibn Mas'ud reacted on this suggestion of Huzaifa. The second category of narratives is reported by Amr ibn Shurahbil Abu Maysara, and I'm going to read out his narrative before you. عن عمر بن شرحبيل أبي ميسرة قال أتى علي رجل وأنا أصلي فقال ثكلتك أمك ألا أراك تصلي وقد أمر بكتاب الله أن يمزق قال فتجوزت في صلاتي وكنت لا أحبس فدخلت الدار فلم أحبس ورقيت فلم أحبس وإذا أنا بالأشعر وإذا حذيفة وابن مسعود يتقابلان وحذيفة يقول لابن مسعود ادفع إليهم المصحف فقال والله لا أدفعه فقال ادفعه إليهم فإنهم لا يألون أمة محمد إلا خيرا فقال والله لا أدفعه إليهم أقرأني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 79 سورة وأدفعه إليهم والله لا أدفعه إليهم. So Amr ibn Shurahbil Abu Maysara said, a person came over to me while I was praying and said, may your mother lose you. I see you praying while the complete destruction of the book of God has been ordered. I shortened my prayer and was not one who could be stopped. I shortened my prayer, and I was not one who could be stopped. I entered the house and was not stopped, and I climbed the stairs and was not stopped. And then it came to my notice that Huzaifa and Ibn Masud were conversing with one another, and the former was saying to the latter, "Hand over the Mushaf to them." He replied, "By God, I will not hand over the Mushaf to them." He again said, "Hand over the Mushaf to them, for they will leave no stone unturned in wanting the good of the ummah of Muhammad." Ibn Masud responded, "By God, I will not hand over the Mushaf to them. The Prophet taught a little over 70 surahs to me, and should I then hand over my Mushaf to them, or should I hand over the Mushaf to them? By God, I will not hand it over to them." So this is the second category of narrative. The third category, viewers, has been reported by Masruq ibn Ajda. He is another student of Abdullah ibn Masud. So the words are, "An Masruq قال كان عبد الله وحذيفة وموسى في منزل أبي موسى فقال حذيفة أما أنت يا عبد الله بن قيس فبعثت إلى أهل البصرة أميرا ومعلما وأخذوا من أدبك ولغتك ومن قراءتك وأما أنت يا عبد الله بن مسعود فبعثت إلى أهل الكوفة معلما فأخذوا من أدبك ولغتك ومن قراءتك." فقال عبد الله أما إني إذن لم أضلهم وما من كتاب الله آيات إلا أعلم حيث نزلت وفيما نزلت ولو أعلم أحدا أعلم بكتاب الله مني تبلغنه العبل لرحلت إليه. Masruq said, "Abdullah, Huzaifa, and Abu Musa were at the house of the latter. Huzaifa said, 'O Abu Abdullah ibn Qais, as far as you are concerned, you have been sent to Basra as their leader and their teacher, and they have learned from you your culture and your language and your reading of the Qur'an. And O Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, as far as you are concerned, you have been sent to Kufah as their teacher, and they have learned from you your culture and your language and your reading of the Qur'an.' Abdullah said, 'Then it should remain clear that I never led them astray, and there is not a verse in the book which I do not know when it was revealed and about what it was revealed. And if I knew that there was someone who knew the book of God more than I do, and my camel could take me to him, I would travel to him.'" So this is the determination expressed by Abdullah bin Masud in this conversation. Next, we move on to the fourth category, and this is narrated by Khumair ibn Malik, and we have different names for him: Khamar, Humayd, Hamza, Humair, Jubair, all before Ibn Malik. So we will see later on which exactly is the true name, but for the moment I'm going to read out his narrative. So it says, "An Khumair ibn Malik قال أمر بالمصاحف أن تغير قال ابن مسعود من استطاع منكم أن يغل مصحفه فليغله فإن من غل شيء جاء به يوم القيامة قال ثم قال قرأت من فم رسول الله 70 سورة أفأترك ما أخذت من في رسول الله." So Khumair ibn Malik said, when the obliteration of the masahif was ordered by Uthman, Abdullah bin Masud said, "Whoever among you can hide his mushaf should do so, for he who hides something will bring it on the day of judgment." And then said, "I have learned 70 surahs of the Qur'an directly from the mouth of the Prophet. Should I now forsake what I learned from the very mouth of the Prophet?" So again we see how Abdullah bin Masud is adamant that he should not forsake his own reading or his own recital from which he acquired directly from the Prophet. Next, viewers, is the fifth category, and this is reported by Zir ibn Hubaysh, and we have actually two versions or two variants reported by Zir. So I'm going to read out the first of them, and the first of them is, "An Zir ibn Hubaysh قال ابن مسعود لقد قرأت من في رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بضع وسبعين سورة وإن لزيد بن ثابت ذؤابتين له." Zir related that Ibn Masud said, "I have learned a little over 70 surahs from the mouth of the Prophet, while Zaid had 2 locks of hair." So again, he expresses his disgust at being asked to hand over or forsake his reading. Now, the second of these has been reported by, the second variant is reported in the Musnad of Ahmed, and as I said, it is also by Zir ibn Hubaysh. And so the words are, عن زر بن حبيش عن ابن مسعود إنه قال كنت غلاما يافيا أرعى غنما أرعى غنما لعقبة ابن أبي معيط فجاء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأبو بكر رضي الله عنه وقد فر من المشركين فقال يا غلام هل عندك من لبن تسقين قلت إني مؤتمن ولست ساقيكما فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم هل عندك من جزعة لم ينز عليها الفحل قال فقلت نعم فآتيتهما بها فأعتق لها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ومسح الضرب ودعا فحفل الضر ثم أتاه أبو بكر رضي الله عنه بصخرة منكعرة فاحتلب فيها فشرب وشرب أبو بكر ثم شربت ثم قال لزر اقلس فقلس فآتيته بعد ذلك فقلت علمني من هذا القول قال إنك غلام معلم قال فأخذت من فيه 70 سورة لا ينازعني فيها أحد. So Zir reports from Ibn Masud, he said, I was a young boy who used to attend to the herd of Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt. The Prophet and Abu Bakr came over and they had run away from the idolaters. They said, young man, do you have some milk from which you can feed us? I replied, I have been entrusted with it and I cannot give it to you for drinking. The Prophet then asked, do you have a she-goat who has not been made pregnant by a male goat? I replied in the affirmative and brought it over to them. The Prophet then tucked the goat's leg between his thigh and shin and wiped her udders and prayed. Her udders got filled. Then Abu Bakr brought over a hollow stone and collected milk in it from her udders. The Prophet and Abu Bakr drank it, and so did I. Then he told the others to contract, so they contracted. I then came over to him after this incident and said, please teach me from the word, that is the Qur'an. He replied, you are a young learner. So I learned 70 surahs directly from him, and no one should dispute me about them. So this is the second variant of the fifth category, and reported by Zir ibn Hubaysh. Now, viewers, we move on to the sixth category, and this has been reported by Shaqiq ibn Salama. And again, it has more than one variant. The first variant is recorded by Imam Muslim in his Al-Jami al-Sahih. And the words are, it says, عن شقيق عن عبد الله أنه قال ومن يغلل يأتي بما غل يوم القيامة ثم قال على قراءة من تأمروني أن أقرأ فلقد قرأت على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 79 سورة ولقد علم أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إني أعلمهم بكتاب الله ولو أعلم أن أحدا أعلم مني لرحلت إليه قال شقيق فجلست في حلق أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أحدا فما سمعت أحدا يرد ذلك عليه ولا يعيبه. So this is the first of the variants, and as I said, it is by Shaqiq ibn Salama, and the words are, and the translation is, Shaqiq reports from Abdullah that he said, and he who hides something will bring forth what he has hidden on the day of judgment. He then said, upon whose reading am I being directed to read the Qur'an? For I have read out a little over 70 surahs to the Prophet, and the companions of the Prophet know that I am the most knowledgeable of them about the Book of God. And when I come to know that someone knows more than the Book of God than me, I would travel to him. Shaqiq said, so I sat with the companions of Muhammad, and I never heard anyone rejecting Ibn Masud's claim or censuring him. So, viewers, this is the first of the variants. Now, the second variant I'm going to read out, and this has been reported in the Al-Mawrid al-Saghir of Tabarani, and it is similar to one of the previous ones that we have recited on the authority of Zir. So the words are عن أبي وائل عن Abdullah ibn Masud رضي الله عنه قال كنت في غنم لآل أبي معيط فجاء النبي ومعه أبو بكر رضي الله عنه فقال يا غلام عندك لبن فقلت نعم ولكني مؤتمن قال فهل عندك شاة لم ينزو عليها الفحل قلت نعم بشاة شتور قال سلام والشتور التي ليس لها زرع فمسح النبي مكان الزر وما لها زرع فإذا الزر حافل مملوء لبنا فأتيت النبي بصخرة منكورة فحلب ثم سقى أبا بكر وسقاني ثم قال للزرع اقلس فرجع كما كان فأنا رأيت هذا من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقلت يا رسول الله علمني فمسح رأسي وقال بارك الله فيك فإنك غلام معلم فأسلمت وأتيت رسول الله فبينما نحن عنده على هراء إذا أنزلت عليه سورة مرسلات عرفة فأخذتها وإنها رطبة من فيه فأخذت من في رسول الله 70 سورة وأخذت بقية القرآن من أصحابه لم يروه عن سلام إلا إبراهيم. So Abu Wail Shaqiq ibn Salama reports, this is the second variant, viewers, from Ibn Masud that he said, I used to attend to the herd of the tribe of Abu Mu'ayth. The Prophet along with Abu Bakr came over and said, young man, do you have some milk? I replied, yes. However, I have been entrusted with it and I cannot give it to you. The Prophet then asked, do you have a she-goat which has not been made pregnant by a male goat? I replied that I have a shatur goat, that I had a shatur goat. Salam, one of the narrators, clarified that shatur is a goat which has no udders. The Prophet then wiped the place where udders usually are, and suddenly it had udders which were filled with milk. I then brought over a hollow stone, and he collected milk in it from her udders. He then gave Abu Bakr and me the milk for drinking, then ordered the udders contract. So they contracted. I washed all this and then came over to him and said, please teach me. He wiped my head and said, may God bless you. You are a young learner. I then embraced faith and came over to the Prophet ﷺ. When we were with him at Hira, Surah Mursalat was revealed to him, and I learned it from him whilst it was fresh from his mouth. Subsequently, I acquired 70 surahs directly from his mouth and learned the rest of the Qur'an from his companions. Viewers, we now move on to the seventh category, and this has been reported by Ubaidullah ibn Abdullah ibn Utbah. And the narrative is recorded in Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif. The words are, وأخبرني عبيد الله بن عبد الله بن عتبة أن عبد الله بن مسعود كره لزيد بن ثابت نسخ المصاحف فقال يا معشر المسلمين اعزلوا عن نسخ المصاحف واتقوا الله رجل والله لقد أسلمت وإنه لفي صلب أبيه كافرا يريد زيد بن ثابت وكذلك قال عبد الله يا أهل الكوفة أو يا أهل العراق اكتموا المصاحف التي عندكم وغلوها فإن الله يقول ومن يغلل يأتي ما غل يوم القيامة فلقوا الله بالمصاحف. قال الزهري فبلغني أن ذلك كره من مقالة ابن مسعود رجال أفاضل من أصحاب رسول الله من أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Az-Zuhri said that Ubaidullah ibn Abdullah ibn Utbah informed me that Abdullah ibn Masud did not like Zayd ibn Thabit writing out the Masahif and said, I have been deposed from writing the Masahif, and the person who has been entrusted with this task, he meant Zayd, by God is the one who was still in the loins of his father, a disbeliever, when I accepted Islam. He similarly said, O people of Kufah, or O people of Iraq, hide your Masahif with you and conceal them, for the Almighty has said, he who hides will bring forth that he has hidden on the day of judgment. So they will meet God with their Masahif. Az-Zuhri said, it has reached me that the pleading companions of the Prophet did not like the words of Ibn Masud. So viewers, this is the 7th category. Now we move on to the 8th category, and this has been reported by Abu Sa'id al-Azdi, and this narrative has been recorded in Kitab al-Masahif of Ibn Abi Dawud. So the words are, عن أبي سيد الأزدي قال سمعت عبد الله ibn Masud يقول أقرأني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 70 سورة أحكمتها قبل أن يسلم زيد بن ثابت. So Abu Sa'id al-Azdi said, I heard Abdullah ibn Masud say, the Prophet taught me 70 surahs of the Qur'an. I preserved them fully before Zayd even became a Muslim. Viewers, we now move on to the 9th category, and this has been reported by Alqamah ibn Qais. And this has been reported by Tabarani in his Al-Mawrid al-Kabir. So the words are, عن ألقمة عن عبد الله قال عجبا للناس وتركهم قراءتي وأخذهم قراءة زيد بن ثابت وقد أخذت من في رسول الله 70 سورة وزيد بن ثابت غلام صاحب زؤابة. Alqamah reported that Abdullah said, strange is the matter of people, and they are giving up my reading and adopting the reading of Zayd ibn Thabit, whereas I have learned 70 surahs directly from the Prophet's mouth. And Zayd ibn Thabit at that time was a boy having locks of hair. Viewers, we now move on to the 10th category, and this has been recorded by An-Nasai in his As-Sunan al-Kubra. And the person who narrates is Hubayra ibn Uraym. So the words are, عن Hubayra ibn Uraym قال قال عبد الله ibn Masud قال على قراءة من تأمروني أقرأ لقد قرأت على رسول الله 79 سورة وإن زيدا لصاحب ذؤابتين يلعب مع الصبيان. So Hubayra ibn Uraym related that Ibn Masud said, on whose reading are you directing me to read? I have read out to the Prophet a little more than 70 surahs when Zayd had 2 locks of hair and used to play with other boys. So now to the 11th category, and this has been reported by Al-Asfad ibn Yazid and recorded in Mujam al-Kabir of Tabarani. So the words are, عن الأسود قال قيل لعبد الله اقرأ على قراءة زيد قال أترك قراءتي لقراءة زيد وقرأت من في رسول الله 70 سورة وهو غلام له ذؤابتان. Al-Aswad said, Abdullah was asked, read on the reading of Zayd ibn Thabit. He replied, should I forsake my reading for that of Zayd, whereas I have learnt 70 surahs from the mouth of the Prophet, and he was a young boy having 2 locks of hair. And viewers, you can see there is some repetition in this regard, but again, we need to have a comprehensive look at all the narratives before we can analyze them, and that is why I'm compelled to read out all these narratives before you, so please do bear with me. And now we move on to the 12th category, and this has been reported by Abu Fakhta, and it has been recorded by Umar ibn Shabba in his Akhbar al-Madina. So the words are, عن ثوير ibn Abi Fakhta عن أبيه قال بعث عثمان رضي الله عنه إلى عبد الله أن يدفع المصحف إليه قال ولما قال لأنه كتب القرآن على حرف زيد قال أما أن أعطيه المصحف فلن أعطيكموه ومن استطاع أن يغل شيئا فليفعل والله لقد قرأت من في رسول الله 70 سورة وإن زيدا لذو ذؤابتين يلعب بالمدينة. So Suwar ibn Abi Fakhta reports from his father who said, Uthman sent a message to Abdullah ibn Masud asking him to hand over his Mushaf to him. He inquired, why should I? Uthman responded, because the Qur'an has been written according to the reading of Zayd. Ibn Masud said, as far as handing over the Mushaf to you is concerned, I will never do so. And he who can should hide part of it, and by God, I have learnt 70 surahs from the mouth of the Prophet while Zayd was a boy, having 2 locks of hair, and would play in Medina. Viewers, we move on to the 13th category, and this is reported by Zazan, Abu Umar Zazan, and this has been recorded by Al-Mawrid al-Kabir, Tabrani's Al-Mawrid al-Kabir. So the words are, عن زازان عن عبد الله قال قرأت على رسول الله 70 سورة وختمت القرآن على خير الناس علي ibn Abi Talib رضي الله عنه. Zazan reports that Abdullah ibn Masud said, I read out 70 surahs of the Prophet and finished the Qur'an with the best of men, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Viewers, we now move on to the 14th category, and this has been reported by Al-Haris ibn Suwaid. And the words are, عن الحارث بن سويد أنه حدثه أن Abdullah ibn Masud أخبرهم قال قرأت على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم 70 سورة من القرآن أخذتها من فيه وزيد ذو ذؤابتين يلعب مع الصبيان وقرأت السائر أو قال بقية القرآن على خير هذه الأمة وأقزاهم بعد نبيهم صلى الله عليه وسلم علي ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi alayhi. So Safwan ibn Qubaysa reports from Al-Haris ibn Suwaid that he reported to him that Abdullah ibn Masud informed them, I learned 70 surahs of the Qur'an from the mouth of the Prophet, while Zaid, having 2 locks of hair, would play with the children, and I learned the whole, or he said that what remained of the Qur'an from the best person of this ummah and the best judges after the Prophet, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Viewers, now we move on to the 15th category, and this has been reported by Hamza ibn Abdullah. And this has been recorded, viewers, in the Jami' Ulum al-Quran of Abdullah ibn Wahab. And so the words are, عن حمزة بن عبد الله قال بلغني أنه قيل لعبد الله بن مسعود ما يمنعك أن تقرأ على قراءة فلان فقال لقد قرأت على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 70 سورة فقال لي لقد أحسنت وإن الذي تسألونني أن أقرأ على قراءته في صلب رجل كافر. Hamza ibn Abdullah said, the report has reached me that it was said to Abdullah ibn Masud, what stops you from reading out the Qur'an on the reading of such and such a person? And he replied, indeed, I have read out 70 surahs to the Prophet. The Prophet said to me, you have read it correctly. And he upon whose reading you are asking me to read out the Qur'an was in the loins of a disbeliever. Now, viewers, we move on to the 16th category, and this has 2 variants also, and this has been reported by Ibrahim al-Nakhai. The first of these variants is reported by Ibn Abi Dawud in his Kitab al-Masahif. So the words are, عن إبراهيم لما أمر بتمزيق المصاحف قال عبد الله أيها الناس غلوا المصاحف فإنه من غل يأتي بما غل يوم القيامة نعم الغل المصحف يأتي أحدكم به يوم القيامة. Ibrahim ibn Muhajir reports from Ibrahim al-Nakhai that when the destruction of the masahif was ordered, Abdullah said, O people, hide your masahif, because he who hides them will bring them forth on the day of judgment. What better a hidden thing that can be brought forth on the day of judgment than the Mushaf? Here is the second variant of Ibrahim al-Nakhai. This has been recorded by Ibn Sa'd in his Tabaqat al-Kubra. And the words are, An Ibrahim قال Abdullah أخذت من في رسول الله بضع وسبعين سورة. So Ibrahim al-Nakhai said, Abdullah said, I learned a little over 70 surahs from the mouth of the Prophet. And we was on to the 17th category, and this has been reported by Abdul Ala ibn al-Hakam al-Kilabi. So, and this has been reported, viewers, in the Kitab al-Masahif of Ibn Abi Dawud. So the words are, حدثنا عبد الأعلى بن الحكم الكلابي قال آتيت الدار أبي موسى الأشعري فإذا حذيفة بن اليمان وعبد الله بن مسعود وأبو موسى الأشعري فوق أجار لهم فقلت هؤلاء والله الذين أريد فأخذت أرتقي إليهم فإذا غلام على الدرجة فمنعني فنازعته فالتفت إلي بعضهم قال خلي عن الرجل فآتيتهم حتى جلست إليهم فإذا عندهم مصحف أرسل به عثمان وأمرهم أن يقيموا مصاحفهم عليه فقال أبو موسى ما وجدتم في مصحفي هذا من زيادة فلا تنقصوها وما وجدتم من نقصان فاكتبوه. فقال حذيفة كيف ما صنعنا والله ما أحد من أهل هذا البلد يرغب عن قراءة هذا الشيخ يعني ابن مسعود ولا أحد من أهل اليمن يرغب عن قراءة هذا الشيخ يعني أبا موسى الأشعري. وكان حذيفة هو الذي أشار على عثمان رضي الله عنه بجمع المساحف على مصحف واحد. ثم إن الصلاة حضرت فقالوا لأبي موسى الأشعري تقدم فإن في دارك. فقال لا أتقدم بين يدي ابن مسعود. فتنازعوا الساعة وكان ابن مسعود بين حذيفة وأبي موسى فدفعه حتى تقدم فصلى بهم. So, Abdul Ala ibn al-Hakam al-Kilabi said, I came to the house of Abu Musa al-Ashri and found Huzaifa ibn al-Yaman, Abdullah ibn Masud, and Abu Musa al-Ashri in an attic. I said, by God, it is these who I am wanting to meet. And I started to climb up to meet them. I found a boy at the beginning of the stairs and he stopped me from going up. I started arguing with him. So one of them turned towards me and told the boy, leave him alone. So I came to them and sat beside them. Lo and behold, they had a Mushaf with them which Uthman had sent to them and had directed them to amend their masahif in accordance with it. Then Abu Musa said, whatever you find more in this Mushaf of mine, do not reduce it, and whatever you find less in it, add to it. Huzaifa then said, how will we succeed in this? By God, there is no one of this city who will leave the qiraat or the reading of this religious authority, that is Abdullah ibn Masud. And similarly, there is no one from the people of Yemen who would leave the qiraat of this religious authority, that is Abu Musa. And it was Huzaifa who would advise Uthman to collect the masahif into one Mushaf. Then the time of the prayer arrived. They told Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, lead the prayer, for we are in your house. He replied, I will not do so in the presence of Abdullah ibn Masud. They argued for a while, and Abdullah ibn Masud was standing between Abu Musa and Huzaifa. Both of them pushed him until he was in front, and then he led the prayer. And viewers, finally, the last of these categories, is 18th category, is reported by Murra ibn Shurahbil, and this has been recorded by Ibn Abi Dawud in his Kitab al-Masahif. And the words are, An Murra qal, ذكر لي أن عبد الله وحذيفة وأبا موسى فوق بيت أبي موسى فآتيتهم فقال عبد الله لحذيفة أما إنه قد بلغني أنك صاحب الحديث قال أجل كرهت أن يقال قراءة فلان وقراءة فلان فيختلفون كما اختلف أهل الكتاب قال وأقيمت الصلاة فقيل لعبد الله تقدم صلي فأبى فقيل لحذيفة تقدم فأبى فقيل لأبي موسى تقدم فإنك رب البيت. Murrah said, someone mentioned it to me that Abdullah and Huzaifa and Abu Musa were at the top of the latter's house. I came over to them. Abdullah said to Huzaifa, listen, it has reached me that you are the originator of this discourse. He said, yes. Ibn Masud said, you do not like that it be said, the reading of such and such a person and the reading of such and such a person, so that they differ from one another, the way the people of the book differed from one another. Murrah said, and the prayer was called, and Abdullah was asked, come forward and lead the prayer. He refused. Then Huzaifa was asked, come forward. He too refused. Then Abu Musa was asked, come forward, for you are the owner of the house. So viewers, these are the 18 categories or the 18 narrators who report this refusal of Abdullah ibn Masud to surrender his Mushaf to the authorities when Uthman had launched a campaign to collect all spurious masahif. Inshallah, in the next episodes, we will discuss the questions which arise on the text and the chain of narration of these narratives. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.